A dying old man has one last wish which his granddaughter must make come true. But what seemed at first to be a simple matter will lead her to discover secrets from the past that will change her life. Night had fallen over the city, wrapping the hospital in a heavy silence. In one of the rooms, Don Julian lay in bed, his breathing slow and labored. The dim glow of the machines reflected the fragility of his body, but in his eyes there was still a glimmer of urgency. At his side, his granddaughter Sophia held his hand gently, feeling the roughness of his skin marked by the years. She had grown up admiring him, seeing in him the image of a man of integrity, with firm values and silences full of meaning. Now, seeing him so fragile, crushed her chest. "Grandpa," she whispered, leaning toward him. The man's lips curved into a faint smile before parting to speak. "I'm not afraid to go, my girl. I had a good life," he said, in a raspy voice. The girl blinked rapidly, trying to hold back her tears. "I know." The old man narrowed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. When he opened them, his gaze became more intense. "There's something I need you to do for me." Sophia leaned closer, her heart pounding, waiting for her grandfather to continue. "In the house, in the attic," the man whispered, pausing to take a breath. "There is a box. Inside, there is something that must reach Camila Herrera." The name caught her by surprise. She had never heard of that woman. She frowned. "Who is she?" The old man let out an almost imperceptible laugh. "Someone who was very important to me. I esteem." Sophia swallowed hard. She knew her grandfather had loved her grandmother deeply, but now she discovered that before her, another woman had occupied his heart. "Please, find her and give her what's inside," he continued, his voice weaker. "It's something I should have done a long time ago." The young woman squeezed his hand tightly. "I promise you." Don Julian sighed, his gaze drifting off into a distant corner of memory. A moment later, he exhaled his last breath. Sophia did not let go of his hand immediately. She stayed there, in silence, with the weight of her promise pressing on her chest. She did not yet understand what it all meant, but something inside told her that the box hidden in the attic would change her life forever. Her grandfather's house felt different. Though every object was still in its place, though the walls still held the same old portraits, there was an emptiness that filled everything. Sophia walked down the hallway with slow steps, dragging her gaze across the old furniture, across the faded photos where her grandfather smiled with his calmness, always with his inseparable wide-brimmed hat. Now he was gone, and she had a promise to keep. Her eyes stopped on the staircase leading to the attic. That place had always had an aura of mystery when she was a child, a forbidden space, full of old boxes and secrets from the past. She took a deep breath and began to climb. Each step creaked under her weight, as if protesting her intrusion. As she pushed the door open, a cloud of dust floated in the air, illuminated by the beam of light coming through the small window. The young woman squinted and moved forward, feeling the rough, cold wood beneath her feet. The attic smelled of time frozen still, of memories asleep in the shadows. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. "In the house, in the attic, there is a box." Her eyes scanned the space, passing over stacked trunks and furniture forgotten by the years. She had no idea where to start. She approached a pile of boxes and began to check their contents. There were black and white photographs, old documents, some yellowed letters with faded ink, but nothing with the name Camila Herrera. The search became more frantic. She moved boxes, lifted dust-covered blankets, opened old wooden cases. The air filled with the sound of shuffled papers and her racing heartbeat. And then she saw it. In a corner, almost hidden under an old coat, there was a small dark wooden box with an inscription carved on the lid. She leaned down and picked it up carefully, blowing away the dust that covered the surface. J and C could be read on the lid, the initials of her grandfather, and of Camila. A shiver ran down her back. She knelt on the floor and, with a knot in her stomach, opened the box. Inside, she found 3 objects: a sealed letter, an old photograph, and an engagement ring. Her fingers brushed the letter delicately. The envelope was sealed, the ink on the paper already beginning to fade, but the name Camila Herrera was still clearly legible, written in a steady hand. The girl swallowed. She took the photo carefully. In the image, a young woman with long, dark hair stared directly at the camera. Her face was serene, her lips barely curved in a discreet smile. There was something in her gaze, something Sophia could not immediately decipher. A rebellious, yet kind air. Her eyes dropped to the ring. It was simple, with a small stone set in the center. She picked it up between her fingers and held it against the light. This ring must have been meant for Camila. Her grandfather had planned to give it to her. The weight of what she had discovered struck her hard. Who had Camila Herrera really been? Why had her grandfather never mentioned her? What story did this letter hide? She sat staring at the open box in her lap, feeling as if she had just opened the door to a past that did not belong to her, but that was now in her hands. She had to find that woman. She came down from the attic, her heart still pounding. She went to the living room and sat at the old wooden table where she had so often shared coffee with her grandfather. The box was still open in front of her. She did not know where to start. Her mother entered the living room at that moment, frowning at her daughter's expression. "Are you okay?" Sophia looked up. She hesitated a second before answering. "I found something in the attic. It's my grandfather's." The woman came closer and looked at the box. Her eyes stopped on the photograph, her face tensing slightly. "Who is she?" she asked. "Camila Herrera," the girl replied. There was a heavy silence. Her mother sat down in front of her, running her fingers along the edge of the table as if searching for the right words. "Your grandfather was always a family man," she finally said. "He loved your grandmother, there was never any doubt about that. But he never spoke of his youth. I always felt there was something he kept to himself." Sophia slid the letter across the table. "He made me promise to deliver it to her." Her mother looked at the envelope without touching it. She sighed and lowered her gaze. "I don't know who that woman was, but if he asked you this, it must be important." The young woman nodded. "I'm going to find her." The decision felt like a blow of reality. She was going to search for a woman who might not even still be alive, who could have changed her name or disappeared without a trace. But she had a starting point. She picked up the photograph firmly. In the corner, in barely visible letters, was written a name: Puerto del Sol, 1968. That was her first clue. The next day, Sophia turned on her computer and searched for information about Puerto del Sol. It was a small coastal town, known for its vineyards and warm climate. It wasn't too far away, but neither was it a place one reached by chance. She stared at the screen, feeling uncertainty run through her body. She had no idea what she was going to find there, but her grandfather had entrusted her with this mission, and she intended to keep her promise. She took the box and placed it in her backpack. That very afternoon, she bought a bus ticket bound for Puerto del Sol. The journey had just begun. The bus rolled along the winding road, leaving the city behind and entering the increasingly open landscape. Sophia leaned her head against the window, watching the mountains stretching into the distance. The afternoon sun painted the sky a deep orange, but her mind was far from the beauty of the scenery. 2 days had passed since she found the box in the attic. 2 days in which she couldn't stop thinking about her grandfather, about Camila Herrera, about the love story that had remained hidden for decades. Had her grandmother known about her? Why had her grandfather married another woman if he loved someone else? She reached into her bag and pulled out the photograph. Camila's image unsettled her, not only because her existence represented an unknown side of Julian, but because in her eyes there was an unfinished story. She sighed and put it away again. Soon she would arrive in Puerto del Sol, and with luck, she would find answers. The town terminal was small, with only a couple of buses parked and a handful of people walking along the cobblestone streets. The salty sea air brushed her face, carrying with it the smell of fresh fish and sea breeze. She walked down the main street, observing the shop signs. Puerto del Sol was a welcoming town, with warm-colored facades and large windows that let in the light of the sunset. There was a calm rhythm in the atmosphere, as if time passed more slowly there. The girl didn't know where to start looking. She stopped at a small cafe with wooden tables out front. Maybe someone from the town would remember her. Upon entering, the smell of freshly ground coffee enveloped her. Behind the counter, a woman with grey hair and a kind expression was drying some cups. "Good afternoon," Sophia greeted, approaching cautiously. "Good afternoon," the woman replied, lifting her gaze with curiosity. The young woman took out the photograph and slid it across the counter. "I'm looking for this woman. Her name is Camila Herrera. My grandfather met her many years ago, and he asked me to find her," she explained calmly. The woman took the photo and looked at it closely. She frowned. "She doesn't ring a bell, but if she lived here, maybe someone in the plaza could tell you something." Sophia nodded with some disappointment. She hadn't expected it to be that easy, but at least she had another place to ask. She left the cafe and headed to the main square. The place was full of life. Children running, couples strolling, merchants closing their market stalls. She approached an elderly man selling handicrafts. "Excuse me," she said firmly. "I'm looking for information about a woman named Camila Herrera. Did you know her?" The old man looked at her in surprise and then fixed his gaze on the photo. "Camila Herrera," he repeated in a low voice. For a moment, she thought he was going to deny it like the woman at the cafe, but instead, he slowly nodded. "Many years ago, yes. But she left here a long time ago." Sophia's heart beat faster. At last, a real lead. "Do you know where to?" The man scratched his chin as if trying to remember. "I'm not sure, but before leaving, she used to buy often at Mrs. Teresa's store. If anyone knew her well, it was her." The young woman thanked him for the information and asked how to get to the store. "It doesn't exist anymore," the old man explained. "Teresa passed away a few years ago. Her son inherited the business, though he turned it into a wine shop." The details struck her as curious. But at the moment, she didn't give it too much importance. "What's her son's name?" "Emiliano," the man replied. The wine shop was on a corner of the town, with a wooden sign that read Montes de Sol, Wines and Liquors. From the outside, it looked like a modest but well-kept place, with shelves full of bottles visible through the large window. She entered cautiously. A tall man, about 28 years old, stood behind the counter, cleaning a glass absent-mindedly. His dark hair fell messily over his forehead, and his rolled-up shirt sleeves revealed strong forearms. Sophia cleared her throat. "Excuse me." The man looked up. His brown eyes scanned her from head to toe with a mix of curiosity and disinterest. "How can I help you?" The girl took out the photo and held it in front of him. "I'm looking for this woman. Her name is Camila Herrera. I was told your mother knew her." Emiliano's expression changed subtly. His gaze shifted from indifference to something more serious. "Yes, that name sounds familiar," he said, setting the glass down on the counter. "My mum used to talk about her sometimes. She was a frequent customer." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "Do you know where she went?" The young man crossed his arms and studied her closely. "Maybe. But first tell me, why are you looking for her?" The girl hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure how much she should tell him, but if she wanted his help, she had to be honest. "My grandfather asked me to find her before he died," she finally said. "He said she was the love of his life." Emiliano raised an eyebrow. "Your grandfather, Julian Aguirre?" The man frowned, as if trying to recall the name. Then, he shook his head. "Doesn't ring a bell," Sophia sighed. "I didn't expect you to know him. I just want to know where Camila Island." Emiliano placed his hands on the counter. There was something in his expression that irritated her. Maybe I can help you, he said carelessly. But I don't like doing favors for free. The girl narrowed her eyes. Free? I'm not asking you for money, just information. He smirked. And I'm just saying. If you want me to help, we could make a deal. What kind of deal? Dinner. A calm conversation, no rush. Sophia huffed. Seriously? That's your condition? Emiliano shrugged, amused. Not every day, a mysterious woman walks into my shop looking for someone from the past. She crossed her arms, refusing to give in. She didn't have time for games, but she didn't have another option either. Fine, she finally said, but first tell me what you know. The young man picked up a bottle of wine and set it on the counter. Camila moved to a mountain town a few years ago. It's called San Rafael. Sophia felt her search take an unexpected turn. Then I'll have to go there, she murmured. Emiliano leaned an elbow on the table and looked at her with a sly smile. I'll go with you, she glared at him. Why would you want to do that? The man shrugged. Let's call it curiosity. Sophia knew at that moment that her journey was about to get much more complicated. The sound of the engine broke the dawn silence as Emiliano's car drove along the road. The girl stared out the window at the landscape, the mountains in the distance, and the sky still holding the last traces of night. She couldn't believe she was in that car with a stranger who only a few hours earlier had decided to join her trip. Everything about that guy unsettled her. His arrogant attitude, his smile that seemed like a constant challenge, and the way he seemed to enjoy getting under her skin. But beyond that, he had information about Camila. And although she didn't fully trust him, she couldn't ignore that his mother had known the woman she was searching for. How far is San Rafael? She asked, breaking the silence. About 5 hours, Emiliano replied without taking his eyes off the road. Sophia sighed. The trip would be long. If it bothers you so much being here, you can still get out, he said with a mocking smile. She shot him a glare. I just want to get there quickly. The young man let out a low laugh. You don't seem like the kind of person who takes impulsive trips. I'm not, she admitted. But I made my grandfather a promise. For the first time, he didn't respond with sarcasm. He turned his head slightly, watching her from the corner of his eye. He must have been someone important to you. Sophia nodded. For a moment, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was shared understanding, a brief respite in the middle of the tension. They stopped at a gas station halfway there. Sophia stretched her arms and got out of the car while Emiliano filled the tank. The fresh mountain air helped clear her head. She took out Camila's photo and looked at it again. The young man came back and noticed her expression. Still doubting? It's not doubt, she replied. I just don't understand why my grandfather never spoke about her. He leaned against the car, arms crossed. Maybe the story was too complicated. Sophia put the photo away. How much do you know about Camila? Emiliano looked toward the road before answering. Not much. I only know my mum was fond of her. She said Camila always ordered the same wine and seemed like someone alone. I remember once she mentioned that Camila used to wait for letters that never arrived. Sophia felt a chill. Her grandfather had never mentioned if he had ever tried to contact Camila. What if he had and she never received his letters? What if she thought he had forgotten her? The sound of the gas pump stopped. Emiliano straightened up and stretched his arms. Let's go, he said. The girl nodded, her mind still spinning with the new information. The mountains rose around them when they finally reached San Rafael. The town was smaller than she had imagined, with narrow streets and adobe houses that seemed to withstand the passage of time. There were hardly any people on the streets, just a few shops opening for the day. Emiliano parked near a grocery store. Maybe they know something here. They both went in and approached the counter, where a middle-aged woman was arranging products on the shelves. Excuse me, said Sophia. I'm looking for a woman named Camila Herrera. She lived here some years ago. The woman frowned and crossed her arms. Why are you looking for her? Sophia hesitated. She was a friend of my grandfather. The shopkeeper looked at her with suspicion. For a moment, the girl felt she was about to deny everything. But then the woman sighed and pointed to a house on the outskirts of town. She lived there. But I haven't seen her in years. Sophia's heart pounded. Do you know if anyone else might have information about her? The woman shrugged. Maybe old Tomas. He lived here all his life and knows the town's stories. Emiliano glanced at Sofia with a smile. Let's go find Tomas then. Old Tomas turned out to be a thin man with sun-darkened skin and calloused hands. He was sitting outside his house, carving a piece of wood with a small knife. Sofia approached cautiously. Excuse me, did you know Camila Herrera? The old man stopped his work and looked up. His face showed surprise, as if he hadn't heard that name in a long time. Camila, he murmured. The girl nodded anxiously. My grandfather knew her many years ago. His name was Julian Aguirre. Tomas blinked and then smiled with melancholy. Ah, of course, Camila talked about a Julian. Sofia's chest tightened. Her grandfather hadn't been a ghost in Camila's life. She remembered him too. Where is she now? The old man set the knife aside. I don't know. But before she left, she told me something. The young woman held her breath. What? Tomas looked at her intently. She said that if someone ever came asking about her, I should tell them to look at the hidden lake. Sofia exchanged a glance with Emiliano. The hidden lake? He asked. The old man pointed east. It's a few kilometers from town. Camila used to go there very often. She said it was the only place where she could feel peace. Sofia nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. Thank you, she said sincerely. The old man smiled at her. I hope you find what you're looking for, child. Back in the car, Sofia looked at Emiliano. Do you think it's worth going all the way to the lake? He started the engine. There's only one way to find out. The girl looked out the window. Each clue brought her closer to Camila. But at the same time, she felt she was about to discover something bigger than she had imagined. The road to the hidden lake was narrow and surrounded by trees swaying in the cool mountain breeze. Sofia watched the landscape from Emiliano's car, feeling adrenaline run through her body. She was about to find Camila Herrera. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Emiliano kept his eyes on the road, his relaxed expression contrasting with her restlessness. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked, without taking his eyes off the road. The young woman pressed her hands together on her lap. I didn't travel all this way to turn back now. The boy smiled with that playful air that irritated her. I like determined people. She rolled her eyes and looked out the window again. Every time they talked, Emiliano seemed to enjoy provoking her, but deep down, Sofia was beginning to notice he wasn't as unpleasant as she had thought at first. After a few more minutes, the young man slowed down and pointed ahead. There it island. In the distance, the lake stretched out like a dark mirror among the mountains. Morning mist floated over the surface, giving it a mystical air. To one side, a small wooden cabin stood solitary among the trees. Sofia felt a knot in her stomach. If Camila was anywhere, it was there. Emiliano turned off the engine. Let's go, he said, decisively. They got out of the car and walked along the dirt path until they reached the cabin door. The girl took a deep breath and raised her hand to knock. A few seconds of silence. Then, the creak of footsteps on the other side of the door. Finally, it opened slowly. The woman who appeared before them had grey hair tied in a simple braid. Her skin showed the marks of time, but her eyes, a deep honey color, still held a surprising intensity. Sofia didn't need her to introduce herself. She knew instantly that she was standing before Camila Herrera. The old woman narrowed her eyes, watching them cautiously. Can I help you? The girl swallowed hard. Are you Camila Herrera? The woman tensed slightly but nodded slowly. Yes. Who's asking? Sofia felt her heart pounding. My name is Sofia Aguirre. I'm the granddaughter of Julian Aguirre. Camila's reaction was immediate. Her lips parted in astonishment, and her eyes shone with something indecipherable. "Julian," she whispered, almost to herself. Emiliano, who had remained silent, crossed his arms and glanced at Sofia, waiting for her next move. "Before he died, my grandfather asked me to find you," she continued. "He said he had something important to give you." Camila looked at the girl with a mix of emotion and sadness. Then she stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in," she said calmly. The cabin was small but cozy. There were a couple of worn armchairs, a wooden table in the center, and an unlit fireplace in the corner. On the walls hung old photographs and shelves full of yellowed books. Sofia sat down across from the woman and took out the box she had found in the attic. The air grew heavy with silent tension as she placed it on the table. Camila stared at it, as if the simple object before her carried the weight of her entire life. With trembling hands, she opened it and took out each item with extreme delicacy. First, the photograph. Her fingers brushed the paper with an almost reverent softness. "This picture we took in Puerto del Sol," she murmured, her voice breaking. "Julian took it of me a day before he left." Then, the ring. She held it between her fingers and let out a faint laugh. "I never thought I'd see this again." Finally, the letter. When she read her name on the envelope, a slight sob escaped her lips. For a long moment, she stayed still, as if afraid to open it. Sofia felt a knot in her throat. "Do you want me to read it for you?" Camila looked up, and in her eyes there was gratitude. "Please." The girl unfolded the paper and began to read aloud. "Dear Camila, there is not a single day I have not thought of you. When I left, I did so with the promise of returning. I carried this ring with me, certain that when I came back I would place it on your finger and we would be together forever. But fate played us a cruel trick. They told me you had died in the bombing. I believed you were gone forever. The pain made me leave. I tried to move on, but I could never forget you. Years later, I learned you were alive. But you already had another life, another family. I did not want to intrude on your happiness, but I never stopped loving you. This ring should have been yours. Perhaps it still is, even if only as a memory of what we could have been. If you read this, I hope you know that until the last day of my life, my love for you never disappeared. Julian." When Sofia finished reading, the silence in the cabin became absolute. Camila had her hands covering her face, her shoulders trembling slightly. It was the first time she read those words, the first time she knew that Julian had searched for her, that he had never forgotten her. Emiliano, who had remained apart, watched the scene with a seriousness Sofia had never seen in him before. The woman took the ring and held it tightly. "I loved him all my life too," she whispered. Sofia's voice trembled slightly. "He wanted you to know the truth. He couldn't leave without you knowing." Camila looked at her with reddened eyes. "Thank you, Sofia. Thank you for bringing me this." For the first time since her journey began, the girl felt the weight of her grandfather's promise lift. She had fulfilled her mission, but deep down, she knew this story was not yet over. The fire crackled in the fireplace, casting trembling shadows on the wooden walls. The woman remained silent, holding Julian's letter in her hands. Her eyes stayed fixed on the paper, as if she wanted to absorb every word, etch them into her skin. Sofia watched her from the other side of the table. The emotion on the old woman's face was overwhelming. She knew Camila was not crying only for what she had lost, but for everything she had never known. "Did you ever look for him?" she asked softly. Camila raised her gaze, her eyes red from the tears she held back. "I thought he had died," she murmured. The fireplace crackled again, filling the silence with its cozy warmth. Emiliano, who had remained quiet the whole time, cleared his throat and stood up. "I'll step outside for a moment." said, heading toward the door. Sophia watched him disappear into the night. He wasn't the type to stay during overly emotional moments. The woman sighed and set the letter on the table. For years I wondered what had happened to him. She confessed, when my house was destroyed in the bombing, I was forced to flee. I lost contact with everything I knew. To me, Julian had disappeared too. The young woman swallowed hard. She couldn't imagine the pain of thinking the love of her life was dead, only to discover decades later that he had been alive all along. My grandfather suffered too, she said quietly. He moved on, but he always carried you in his heart. Camila caressed the ring with her fingertips. He was right not to seek me. I also built a family. I had a good husband, children, but I never forgot Julian. Her grandfather had thought the woman he loved had died in the bombing, and Camila had believed Julian had died in the war. They had loved each other, but life had stolen their chance to be together. A heavy silence filled the space between them. "Do you think destiny plays with us?" the old woman asked suddenly. Sophia looked at her attentively. "Sometimes I feel life puts the right people in front of us at the wrong time," the old woman continued. "It lets us taste love, only to snatch it away afterward." The girl clenched her hands on her lap. She didn't know how to answer. The woman smiled with melancholy. "But I also believe love never disappears. It can change shape, but it's always there." The words resonated in Sophia's chest more than she wanted to admit. When she stepped out of the cabin, the night was cool and the sky was clear. Emiliano was leaning on the wooden railing, his eyes fixed on the reflection of the moon over the lake. "Are you okay?" she asked, approaching. He didn't answer right away. He just exhaled a long sigh before turning toward her. "I didn't think this would affect me so much." Sophia leaned beside him. The young man shrugged. "I don't know. I guess it makes me think about my mother." She looked at him closely. He didn't usually talk much about himself, always keeping that carefree attitude, as if nothing really affected him. "Did your mum lose a love too?" Emiliano gave a joyless smile. "Maybe. She never said it, but sometimes I'd see her looking at old letters, like she was waiting for someone to come back." Sophia felt a knot in her stomach. Suddenly, she realized how much the absence of a person could shape someone else's life. They both fell silent. Only the sound of the water gently lapping against the shore accompanied them. "And you?" he asked suddenly. "Have you ever felt like you let something important slip away?" The girl blinked, surprised by the question. She wasn't sure what to answer. She had never had a great love that had marked her that way. "I don't know," she admitted. "I think I've never allowed myself to feel something like that." Emiliano looked at her curiously. "Why not?" She crossed her arms. "Maybe because I've always been afraid it would end in tragedy. Love never seems to turn out well." He let out a low laugh. "You're pretty pessimistic." Sophia smiled ironically. "I'm just realistic." Another silence followed. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. The girl felt a strange sense of calm at his side. She hadn't expected to find company on this journey, much less someone who made her question things about herself. "You know?" said Emiliano, turning to face her. "Maybe love isn't about finding the perfect moment, but about seizing it when it comes." Sophia held his gaze. The boy was smiling, but not with mockery or challenge this time. It was a different smile, more sincere, closer. Sophia's heart beat a little faster. She looked away before he could notice. "We should rest," she said firmly. He burst out laughing. "Whatever you say, pessimist." Sophia shook her head, smiling slightly, and went back to the cabin. But as she closed the door behind her, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something inside her had changed. Maybe Emiliano was right. Maybe love wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment, but about taking it when it was right in front of you. Dawn painted the sky in soft shades of pink and orange when Sophia stepped out of the cabin. The morning breeze brushed her face as she inhaled the cold mountain air. She had slept little. After the conversation with Camilla, her mind had been too restless to rest. She had kept her promise. She had found Camilla, delivered her grandfather's letter, and witnessed the raw emotion of a woman who, for years, had believed Julian had forgotten her. Everything her grandfather had been unable to do in life, she had done for him. But then, why did she feel something was still incomplete? She hugged herself and looked out at the lake. Maybe because this journey hadn't only been about her grandfather. Footsteps behind her broke the silence. Another sleepless night? Emiliano appeared at her side, hands in his pockets and a lazy smile on his face. His still messy hair suggested he hadn't slept much either. The girl shot him a sideways glance. He shrugged. I was thinking about a lot of things. Like what? The young man looked at the reflection of the sun on the water before replying. Like how sometimes we spend life waiting for something that never comes. Or how we let slip things that are right in front of us. Sophia felt a small jolt in her stomach. Are you saying that about Camilla and my grandfather? Maybe. Emiliano turned his head and looked at her intently. Or maybe I'm saying it about you. The young woman opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. The warmth rushing to her face took her by surprise. I've been watching you this whole trip, you know? He continued. You're the kind of person who looks ahead, who moves forward without fear, but you're also the kind who builds walls. She frowned. And what do you know? Emiliano smiled. Nothing. Just what I see. Sophia crossed her arms, feeling strangely vulnerable. She wasn't used to someone analyzing her like that. And what is it you see? He leaned slightly toward her, just enough for his presence to surround her. I see someone who's afraid of feeling too much, of being consumed by love. The girl felt her heart pounding. There's nothing wrong with being cautious, she retorted, with a firmness that sounded more like self-defense. The young man let out a low laugh and shook his head. No. But there is something wrong with shutting yourself off from what could be. The atmosphere between them grew heavier, charged with something neither of them was saying aloud. Sophia looked away. I didn't come here to talk about me. I know. Emiliano smiled softly. But tell me, now that you've kept your promise, what's next for you? The question caught her off guard. She hadn't thought about it. She had been so focused on finding Camilla that she hadn't considered what would come after. I suppose going back home, she murmured. And is that what you want? The automatic answer in her mind was yes, but when she opened her mouth, she couldn't say it. At home, her mother was waiting, but nothing more. For 27 years, she hadn't known what she wanted for her life. She had spent the years jumping from one career to another, without deep friendships or loves, just focused on moving forward. Now, after such a long journey, she didn't even understand what had driven her to do it, and she wasn't sure she wanted to return to the same routine as always. The boy smirked. You're not sure. Sophia felt irritated, not because he was right, but because she hated that he could read her so easily. I just want to take a moment to think, she said firmly. He nodded, but there was something else in his gaze. Then think carefully, and with that, he walked away, leaving her with her own whirlwind of thoughts. Hours later, Sophia was helping Camilla organize some books on a shelf. The old woman moved slowly, but with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to live with the passing of time. Camilla stopped arranging books and watched her with the wisdom of one who had lived many lives. Life is too short to live it in fear, Sophia. The young woman looked up, feeling the weight of her words. Your grandfather and I couldn't be together, but we lived. We didn't just sit around waiting for what never came. We looked for other reasons to keep going, other ways to be happy. Sophia frowned. I'm not afraid. Camilla smiled tenderly. Yes, you are. You're afraid of feeling too much. Afraid that if you give yourself over, everything will fall apart. But Sophia, love isn't about guarantees. It's about taking risks, about living. The young woman felt a lump in her throat, but the old woman wasn't finished. Love is important, yes, but it's not everything. You can't live your life waiting to find it, nor can you shut yourself off from it out of fear of losing it. Life isn't just about loving someone, it's about finding things that make you wake up each morning wanting to keep going. A purpose, a passion, something that makes you feel alive. Sophia lowered her gaze, processing every word. Look around you, Camila went on. This world is bigger than you think. There are stories to tell, places to discover, things to learn. Don't waste your life avoiding pain, because by doing so, you're also denying yourself joy. Silence settled between them, heavy but full of meaning. Love isn't just a story from the past, Camila concluded softly. It's also the present, and the future. And if one day it comes to you, don't let it slip away. But if it doesn't, don't let that be the only thing that gives your life meaning, too. The words remained engraved in Sophia's mind long after she had left the cabin. When she got into the car with Emiliano, he glanced at her sideways. Ready to head back? The girl looked at the road ahead of them, but in her mind, she didn't see the way back home. She saw everything this journey had changed inside her. Yes, she finally said. But this time, she wasn't so sure. Emiliano started the engine, and they began to drive away from the lake. The air of the road felt different. Lighter, freer. Sophia watched the landscape rushing past as the car headed back to Puerto del Sol. Yet, unlike when she arrived, this time she wasn't in a hurry to return home. She had closed the chapter of her grandfather and Camila. But her own story was only just beginning. When they reached the town, Emiliano parked in front of his wine shop and looked at her with a half smile. "Well, Miss Aguirre, here ends your great adventure," he said with his usual carefree tone, but there was something more in his eyes. Sophia looked at him without answering right away. Before, this would have been the moment when she'd say goodbye without looking back, but she wasn't the same anymore. She leaned an elbow on the window and raised an eyebrow at him. "In such a hurry to get rid of me?" The boy let out a low laugh. "No, but I thought you wanted to go back to the city." The young woman turned her gaze toward the quiet street, the sea breeze brushing her face. The city awaited her, with its established routine, with its uneventful life, but also with the monotony she had never dared to question. "You know what, Emiliano?" she said with a calm smile. "I think I'm going to stay a little longer." He raised both eyebrows, surprised but amused. "Oh yeah? Yes," she replied with certainty. "I spent too much time not knowing what I wanted. Now I want to figure it out." The boy crossed his arms, leaning against the wheel. "And tell me, what do you want to do?" Sophia took a deep breath. "I want to write." He looked at her curiously. "Write?" She nodded. "My grandfather always told me that every person has a story to tell. During this trip, I realized he had a story no one knew. But I also realized there are many more out there. Maybe it's time to tell some of them." Emiliano smiled. "I like the sound of that," Sophia shrugged. "If I'm going to stay around here, I need to do something with my time." "Well," he said, with his usual teasing tone, "I could hire you at the wine shop." She feigned indignation. "You think I'd be any good at selling wine?" He shrugged with a mischievous smile. "I don't know, but people would probably like to see a new face. Besides, I want to renovate it. Some help would do me good." Sophia rolled her eyes, but couldn't help smiling. There was something in the way Emiliano made her laugh, in the way he looked at her, as if he always knew what she was thinking, that made her feel good. Maybe this was also part of what Camila had told her, to open up, not just to love, but to experiences, to whatever life had to offer. "All right," said the girl with feigned resignation. "I'll help you. but don't expect me to serve wine with a smile all the time." He furred. Emiliano laughed. "As long as you don't drop the bottles, I'll be fine." The days that followed were unlike anything Sofia had ever known. She stayed in Puerto del Sol, rented a small room near the beach, and began to write. Not only the story of her grandfather and Camila, but everything she had learned on her journey. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. And Emiliano, somehow, became part of that new life without her even realizing it. Her afternoons at the wine shop became an unexpected routine. He teased her with his charming arrogance. She pretended it annoyed her, but they both knew they enjoyed each other's company. Besides, the young man had kept his word about renovating it. And now it wasn't just a wine shop. There were also tables, and they served coffee. It was a small bar, simple but warm. Emiliano had said he wanted to share more with the world. He, too, had spent too much time isolated in his own pain after his mother's death. One day, after closing the shop, the young man took her to a hill overlooking the sea. They sat on the sand, watching the sun sink into the horizon. "So now you're officially a writer," he commented with a smile. Sofia smiled. "I haven't published anything yet, but you will," he said with certainty. "And it will be incredible." She looked at him carefully. "You always talk as if you know everything." Emiliano turned his face toward her. "Not everything, but I know when something's real, like us." Sofia's heart gave a slight jolt. He didn't need to say more. There was no need. She knew too that this was real. She took a deep breath and turned her gaze to the sea. She didn't have all the answers yet, but that was okay, because now she understood that life wasn't about certainties, but about daring to live. Sometimes, life takes us down paths we didn't expect, but maybe, just maybe, those paths are the ones that truly lead us to where we were always meant to be. Sofia began this journey thinking her only mission was to fulfill her grandfather's wish, but she ended up finding something more. She discovered that love is not just a story from the past, but something built in the present. That second chances don't always come in the way we expect, but that doesn't mean they aren't valuable. That life is full of unexpected roads, and the worst thing we can do is close the doors before even trying. And so, with a notebook in hand and a story to tell, Sofia knew that, for the first time, she was ready to write her own destiny. And so, dear friends, we reach the end of this story. I've loved sharing it with you, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so I can keep bringing you stories of kindness, love, gratitude, and hope. Leave me a comment if you liked it, sending you a hug, and see you in the next story.